Hello, this is Executive Director Angelia Coleman. And today we're going to start presenting Healing Families Lives in partnership with Works of Heart classes, coaching, speaking, and mentoring. We're going to present the Self-Esteem and Growth Skills for Teens presentation and audience participation program. And since we're doing this online and not, in person, you can feel free to make comments in the comments section. And if they're appropriate, we'll address them. And it's a strengths-based approach to mental health in adolescence. And this was written and first presented in 2017 by Reverend Angelia Swartz Coleman, MS. That's me. Growing up in poor, underprivileged areas, I got an itch on my leg here, or in abusive or neglected homes sets kids up for mental health issues. In this program, we hope to instill basic mental health principles to help teens become more balanced adults. The goal is to help teens to see that they are in charge of their own mental health and the choices they make to achieve it. We aim this information at the child instead of the parents so that they are the most active participants in their mental health. This, we feel, is the best way to reach them at this age and not have them resent any authority figures trying to teach them these things. You know how kids are. They don't want to listen, especially if they're teens, to their parents or teachers or whatever. Some of them anyway. Some of them are, a little more understanding, but some of them, no. The family is the primary support system for the child, but families don't always participate actively in the raising of the child. Luckily, for some kids, an extended family member may step up and take the parental role. But this does not always happen. It would be great if all families were active participants in their child's mental health, but they aren't. That's why we go out into the community to reach kids and teach them things that they may not otherwise learn from the adults in their lives. We have referrals for almost any social services need. And if any of the children ask for a specific need, this is when we present them at the schools or libraries, then we can, have a referral source to give them. School counselors are welcome to attend the programs and take notes on specific teens and any areas of concern. And of course, that's in the school when we present it at a school. And if you'd like us to present it at your school, maybe next year when school starts again, just shoot us a message or an email at healingfamilieslives@gmail.com, and we will, get you on our schedule when we have school again. Parents are welcome to attend if the school wishes to organize it that way. And again, if you're a school or a church or an organization and you want to do this for your particular place, you organize it how you want it. If you want parents to come in, that's up to you. If you don't want parents to come in, again, you get more out of the kids when the parents don't come in. Just saying. This program is aimed at the local culture, here in Louisville, Kentucky, but it's, based everywhere because the same common ideas and, sense of mind is pretty much everywhere in the world in the teenager. Any family or child can benefit from the information, however. Some kids do not have a balanced sense of reality. It is our goal to help them see a bigger picture for their future. You may host this presentation in any way that you deem appropriate for your school or church or organization. The speaker brings up the topics, then asks the children for examples. The school representative then chooses 3 teens to give their examples. This gives the kids different perspectives and things to think about. So you would have a counselor or principal, teachers, whoever, and usually there's always, and there's 2 microphones, And they would pick 3 students, when we come up with a topic, does anyone want to talk about this? And they can raise their hand, and the school representative picks 3 students to come up and to talk about this. And like I said, this gives the guys listening, different perspectives to see and think about, to get their own, thoughts started on what we're talking about. So here we would go ahead and start. And I would come up and say, strengths. What does strength mean to you? And then, the school representative could raise your hand, and then we'd have our 3, representative kids say, what strength means to them. And then I would say, can strength be an attitude? And then, have more come up. And they could say yes or no, or whatever they think about certain attitudes that could be a strength. How about a set of practices, things that you do, can make you strong? And some, we have our other 3 come up, and, they might say, being disciplined, doing the right thing, having a good relationship with people. Again, everyone's going to be different. So the people listening who might not be so brave to put their little hand up, can hear other perspectives and kind of relate that to themselves. So they're still learning things. And then I would say, how do you build on strengths? And we have another 3 representatives come up and say how they think they build on strengths, whether it's learning more, or, trying harder to be nice to people, or, like an athlete might say, lifting weights. It just depends. Everyone's different. And then competencies. I would ask them, what do you think you're competent at? What are your competencies? And then their 3 representatives would come up and say what they are. Like, I'm a good person. I get good grades. I care about people. So, and then the other people listening are going to hear, about competencies, and think about their competencies and what they're good at. And then I would say, what are the accomplishments you're most proud of? And then the 3 representatives this time would stand up and say what they're most proud of, their accomplishments are. Like I got a year letter, for Sunday school, or I got an A in this class that I thought was kind of hard, or, I helped this younger kid do this, whatever they're proud of that they have accomplished. And like I said, then the people listening, start thinking about things they have accomplished that they're proud of. And then goals. What are your goals for the future? And you'd have the 3 kid representatives, and you want different ones each time. You want, different ones. You don't want the same 3 kids representing the whole student body, because then other kids are going to, not be so great with that if that's a kid they don't particularly like. So you want different ones each time to stand up and give their, perspective on this. So they might say, my goal is to be a pastor. My goal is to be a teacher. My goal is to be, a mom, and just take care of my kids, whatever their goal is. And then the kids listening will think about what their goals are in life. So I think you're getting the picture here. Again, what is their motivation for wanting these things out of their life? And you have your other 3 representatives from the student body come up and tell what's their motivations. Oh, my grandpa was a preacher, so I want to be a preacher. Oh, Miss So-and-so helped me out so much, I want to be a teacher just like her. Or, my mom was the best mom ever, my grandma was the best grandma ever, and I want to be just like them. Whatever their, motivations are. So then the kids in the audience can think about their motivations for their goals. Excuse me. And so then, ask them to make a commitment to identify and make use of resources and natural supports. So I would say, okay, in your life, what resources, natural supports do you have to help you to achieve these goals? And you have your 3 representatives from the student body come up. And, one might say, my pastor, my mother, my grandmother, the school resource center, or whatever the case is. And then, of course, that gets the other kids thinking about what their natural support systems and everything are. Committed to collaborate with peers, family, and others in general. So then I would ask, why is it important to work with, other people, your family, to achieve these things? And that's a little harder one because that involves a little bit of higher thinking, and a lot of kids aren't there yet, but there's always some who are. Um, and then they can say what they think the reason is why you want to get along with others and be a good person in society, so that there's not conflict in your life, so that, you can get along with your family and that'll be good for your future kids. Or, so that you don't have problems with people in the workplace. And then that can get the other kids listening, thinking about these things. And, this is the goal, is to get them thinking about their future. This is, going to be their life, and that's important for them to be able to deal with it. Excuse me. Then we're going to go to mental health. I'll say, what does mental health mean to you? And you get your three representatives. They might say, it means, being a decent person, or they might say it means being, smart, not crazy. It means being, good to other people, whatever it means to them. And of course, that's going to get the other students thinking about what it means to them. Wellness. What does wellness mean to you? It might mean being, having a good attitude, knowing what you're doing, being nice, being healthy, it just depends. And again, of course, that gets the other students thinking about what does that mean to them? Coping, what does that mean to you? And then you have your three representatives come up and they tell what coping means to them. So this whole big thing is kind of like, a group experience. These three representatives are telling, and then it gets the other kids thinking about what does coping mean to me? Having, a belief system that I can fall back on, being able to handle, things that come my way that might upset me, being able to deal with things that come up in my life. And again, of course, that's going to get the other kids thinking about, what is coping to them. Prevention, when they think of that, what do they think about? A lot of people think of, drug and alcohol, abuse, crime. So again, that's going to get other people thinking about that and how, maybe they need to prevent some things in their life, especially if they didn't come up in the best home and there's, problems with abuse and violence and, illegal activities in the home. We don't want them to follow that pattern. We want to break that pattern, and get them, thinking about their future and, not just fall in step where, some family curses are happening. Some youth are under long-term stress and are at risk for mental illness and domestic violence. So, then I would ask them, what does stress mean to you? And usually everybody, things that they can't handle, things that bother them, things that they can't do that they'd like to do. Everybody has a different, but similar, idea of what stress is to them. And of course, that gets the other kids thinking about what is stressful to them. Risk. What would be risk to you? Some people might say, committing sins, doing drugs, having unprotected sex at this age. That's a big thing in the teen years. Again, then other kids would start thinking about what this means to them. And then, mental disorders, what would that mean to you? And, at this age, there's going to be a little, flippancy there, and they're going to be like, being crazy, she's crazy, or some might actually come up with a disorder like bipolar, depression, things that they might have an experience with. And then, of course, that gets other people thinking about their lives and their things. And medication. Does anyone know anyone who's on medication? What does that medication help them with? And then again, that gets the people, sitting there thinking about, that it's okay that you should take care of your mental health as well as your physical health. So if the doctor says, what you're experiencing is depression, we can give you medication for that and it'll help, or anxiety or bipolar, or even something more serious. But what we want these kids to do is think about, the fact that it's okay, that you have mental health as well as physical health, and it's important to take care of that. Comorbidity. That's a big thing in families. A lot of families, are codependent, especially if they've not had the greatest, family life. And we want to talk about codependency. Does anyone depend on you? My own mother, relied on me a lot as a kid. I remember one time she had some problems in a bank and she asked me to go in there and speak up for her and help her. And I was 9 years old. You know, your 9-year-old should not be going to bat for you with adults in a business, just saying. And also, depression and substance abuse can go hand in hand, and anxiety and substance abuse can go hand in hand. So, comorbidity, dual diagnosis. That is something that, you don't want to put out there because it starts happening, at this age. Teenagers especially sometimes use substances to cope with things in their life because they're very emotional. Unfortunately, that's the effect of the hormones racing through their bodies. And so that's something to bring up and let people think about. Acute stress. Unfortunately, young people also have acute stress, especially if they live in a home where they're being abused or neglected. And sometimes they have to take on adult responsibilities. So I would, ask them, do any of you feel like you have acute stress in your life? Just raise your hand. And that way, we don't have anyone have to come up and tell a story that they might not be ready to tell or talk about to other people yet, and they can just raise their hand. And again, taking on, and like I said, the counselors are in here, so if you want to take a note on that, and talk to this kid later, that's up to you. And again, are there any students here who are taking on adult responsibilities at home because the adults or not able to do that, they're working too much, or they're ill and aren't doing that? And again, you can have a show of hands, and again, the counselors can take note of these things and talk to the students later on. And they might think that's dirty, but it's really not, because what we're trying to do is to help these students. So, it's important to note. Excuse me. And then we're going to talk about public health concepts. We're going to talk about child development. And that's not a concept they really think of. And you can ask them, what does that mean to you? And of course, some are going to say, growing up to be a good person, or, learning as much as you can, or, from becoming from a baby to an adult. And, again, that gets other people thinking about, what does this mean to them? Excuse me. Okay, and then you want to think of times that they protected themselves. Ask them, there were probably times you protected yourself. Can, you guys give me an example? And they can talk about times they protected themselves. Like, I didn't go in the room alone with this guy who asked me because I didn't feel right about it. Or, so-and-so wanted to cheat off my test, but I wouldn't let them because that's not right. Or, this person, said if I loved them, I would do this, but I didn't, and this gets the other kids thinking about, times they protected themselves. And that's empowering to know that they can protect themselves, because as small children, they might not have been able to. And sometimes stuff has happened in, these kids' lives. So you want them to feel empowered, like they can protect themselves. And so then you can talk about risks. Are there times in your lives when you've taken a risk? And you can have them raise their hands, or you can have people come up and talk about the risks they took. But if you do that, don't penalize them in this case for telling you the risks they took. And it might be, committing a sin. It might be cheating on a test. It might be having sex with the boyfriend, and then that, of course, gets other kids thinking about risks they took and say, oh, well, yeah, that was kind of risky. Maybe I don't want to do stuff like that anymore, because we're trying to teach them to take care of themselves. That's important. Interventions. What does that mean to them? What does intervention mean? And a lot of people know about interventions for drug and alcohol, behavioral, things like that. And it can just mean, someone intervened. Someone stepped into your life and said, hey, why are you doing that? That's not a good idea. That can lead to this. And then that's going to be this outcome, And those have been the most impactful experiences in my life. When a grandma or a cousin or, a teacher said, hey, I'm noticing this. Is this a problem? And it got me thinking because, sometimes it wasn't a problem. Sometimes it was, just rumors. We all hear rumors about ourselves and we're like, what? But, the impactful moments are when someone cared enough to say, hey, is this a thing? So, that can be, an intervention. And this gets other people thinking about, people who've cared about them and helps them to think about support systems and building. And this is all things they're going to need as grown-ups that they don't know yet they're going to need as grown-ups. And still a lot of grown-ups in the world don't understand that they need yet. Okay. Their bodies. What do you think about your body? And this is an opportunity for someone to come up who may not think they're so great, and say things. But, what you want to tell them afterwards is like, your body is a product of your parents, to genetics, your environment, what you eat, how you exercise, and so we start out based on what our parents are. If you got 2 fat parents, your predisposition for that is higher. But certainly you can diet and exercise. If you have 2 skinny parents, it's more likely you're going to be skinny. So, tell them that what they need to be happy with is that they have a body, that they're alive, and just make common sense choices for their body. Eat right, exercise, every day or every other day, depending on how much they do and what their doctor thinks. You know, and that gets other kids thinking about their body image. Taking care of themselves, that can be from, what they eat, how they exercise, personal hygiene, because some of these teens with low self-esteem do not have the greatest personal hygiene, and they may have acne due to that. They may have body odor due to that. So that's something you want to get them talking about, thinking about, is, they deserve to take care of themselves, and they should take care of themselves. They should be their best self every day, and that will help them to get some self-esteem, and be okay with their body image. Okay. Understanding being a teen. What does being a teenager mean to you? And you get your 3 representatives up there, and they can tell what does being a teenager mean to them. And most of the time, it's the fact that they're between being a kid and being a grown-up. And it can be that they have tough decisions and peer pressure, and they're becoming. One person's like, they're becoming sexually mature. So that's big on their minds at this age. So again, you're going to have them say these things, and then other people are listening, to get things in their head going. Do they have a concept of development? We can get people to weigh in on that and get other people thinking about that, because development starts from the time, 2 cells join together, and then you start growing until you grow old and, stop developing. So that's something, they have to have a concept that they're always developing. That once they reach 18 years old or 20 years old, that's not it. That's not the end. They're always going to be growing and learning and experiencing new things. Um, Developing a continuous process. What is their goal in life? Are they going to college? Are they going to get a job? Are they going to go to a trade school? Do they want to travel around for a year before they commit to anything? They need to know that life is a continuous process. And if you start doing something and you end up not liking it, you can always stop and start doing something else. There's a lot of pressure on them in these high schools, unfortunately, especially nowadays. You know, because high schools get a little kickback, you know, from universities and different places, that they say their kids are applying to, or the kids actually apply to. And I'm not saying dirty money pay all that kind of thing. I'm saying they get more attention, and their students get more attention. And I don't want any colleges coming back on me, but I had an administrator of a school tell me this, so that's where I heard it from. So don't shoot the messenger. There's a special significance to adolescent development. So you can ask them, what is the big deal about adolescent development? And most of them, again, will point to sexuality, but there's also developing reason and higher thinking. So you want to point that out after your representatives talk about that, and to get people thinking about that. That teenageism is more than about sex. Concept of developmental stages. They have to understand you start as a baby, a toddler, a kid, a big kid, a preteen, a teen, an adult, an older adult, elderly person. What is their concept of development, and then it can get other people thinking about what their concept of development is. And then, of course, you want to say, development is a continuous process. It started, on day one, and until the day you don't wake up, it's continuing. You're always developing and growing as a person. Okay. Talk about their physical growth. At this stage, they're 75% of their adult weight, and 75% of their adult height. So, that's important to note, that they're only going to grow about 25% more once, they're out of their teens, or not at all. I stopped growing when I was 13 years old. So, but I've noticed one of my boys kept growing after he was 18. So, everyone's different. And then you're going to talk about greater physical strength. You're much stronger now than you were when you were a little kid. And when you're an adult, you're going to be more stronger than you are as a teenager. Improve fine motor skills. You might have had trouble writing in elementary school, and now you can do better, and you're only going to get better. Onset of puberty changes in the body, and this is where a lot of quietness starts to creep in. Because if you were to ask, has anyone's body started changing with the onset of puberty? No one really wants to get up and discuss that. So you can just say, you girls might notice increased body hair, enlargement of breasts. You boys might notice increased body hair and facial hair, enlargement of, things. And of course, usually that don't get a giggle, but, just say everyone develops at their own different rate. So if you seem to be, behind the others or ahead of the others, it's not a big deal, because it's all law of averages. Some people fall behind, some people go ahead. As long as you're developing, in a way, that's fine. Changes can be dramatic and sudden. One of my sons grew about 4 inches one summer. He had leg pain all the time. And, it was just because he was growing so fast. And the doctor said the bones are growing, fast, and the muscles are having a problem, keeping up. And that's what's causing him to have all these, leg cramps and pains. Possible moodiness. We all know this, but maybe they don't know it. So, has anyone had more moodiness since you became a teenager? And they might want to talk about that. And then that'll let the other students say, oh, well, if they're having this, it might not be so bad that I'm having this. Confusion. Have you been more confused since you got to be a teenager? And, excuse me, the hormones play havoc with your brain, so chances are, and of course, if no one wants to, they'll just say, well, if any of you do have this, it's a normal thing in your teen years. Storminess. Have y'all had, problems controlling your anger or outbursts? And of course, during your teen years, that's a thing. So, if you can get someone talking about that, then other people can hear that and think, oh, well, yeah, I've done that too. Changes in relative value of family versus peers and outside adults. In their teens, they're really concerned with what the friends think, and they may care more about what teachers think than what their parents think. And that is a normal thing. However, they don't want to rely on their peers all the time for everything, because their peers, they don't realize this, are just as dumb as they are, just as inexperienced in life as they are. So, you're going to put that out there in as gentle terms as you can. And that was our bell. So that's going to be all for today. I hope you found this educational and informational. And I will put the link to donate to help families' lives with our mission. And that's all for now. Until next time.